And see, we even waited so Ms. Habig could get here. Okay, now we're live. Now we'll call this meeting of our 2025 through 2028 Realignment Committee to order. It is 1:32 p.m. on March 21st, 2024. And let's go ahead and call the roll, and I'll handle that to speed things up. Please do indicate that you are here when your name is called. Brooke Formaster.
Here.
Thank you. Joshua Katz.
Here.
Thank you. Miles Baldwin.
Here.
Thank you. David Vick. David, I do see you there. Hopefully you said here. We'll count you in. Sean Fitzsimons.
I am here, sir.
Thank you. Ken Parker.
Here.
Mike Brooks.
Here.
Ali Sharani, or somebody representing her from Yerington. Okay, do not
Here.
have her. Oh,
Sorry.
thank you. Thank you. Ms. Scott, you are serving in her spot today, then, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, I think
Okay.
she's going to try to come, but not sure.
Okay, thank you. Jay Berkeley. I don't see Mr. Berkeley, Dr. Berkeley in here yet. Dallas Larson.
Present.
Thank you. Jason Odegaard.
Here.
Rob Cottrell.
Here.
Thank you. Wade Pearson.
Here.
Paul Sullivan.
Here.
Thank you. Greg Cole.
Present.
Thank you. Tammy Habig.
Here.
Thank you. Lou Marcoussis.
Here.
Thank you. Tony Polzian.
I am here.
Thank you. Art Anderson.
Here.
Thank you. Darvell Bell.
Here.
Thank you. Freeman Holbrook.
Here.
Thank you. Chris Magram.
Here.
Thank you. Mike Kofer.
Here.
Thank you. Domingo Rivera. I thought I saw him come in on his phone. He may not be able to unmute, but I do see Mr. Rivera here. Timothy Jackson.
Here.
Thank you. Bob Levitt.
Here.
Thank you. I am here. Bart Davis. Lori Lotz.
Here.
Thank you. And Paul Anderson.
Here.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to item agenda number 3, which is the approval of today's agenda. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, assuming I can find the right one because I have 97 windows up right now. And let's get to the approval of the agenda, which starts on page number 1, right there, and goes through page 3 in your packet. We will entertain a motion to approve today's agenda.
Tony Polzing from the South. I'd like to make a motion that we approve today's agenda. Does this agenda need to be a flexible agenda?
No, I mean, you can make it one if you want, but it does not need to be.
I'd just like to, I'll make a motion that we make a flexible agenda for today.
Dallas Larson, I'll second.
Thank you. We have Mr. Polzian with a first and Mr. Larson with a second. Any other questions or discussion on this? Hearing none.
Hey, Bart, Bob Levitt.
Yeah.
Or
Bob, go ahead.
just point of clarification. For those of us who are non-voting members of the committee, I just want a point of clarification that we should not be making motions or seconding motions or voting on anything, correct?
Correct, sir.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. We have an agenda for today. Next thing up is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was 2 weeks ago, March the 7th. The minutes of the meeting appear in your packet from pages 5 through 8. Hopefully you've had a chance to at least glance through them. If you see anything that is amiss, please let us know. Otherwise, whenever this committee is ready, we will entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Bart, this is Greg Cole. I move that the minutes from last meeting are approved.
Thank you. We have a motion. Any second?
Sean Fitzsimons, I'll second the motion, Bart.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimons. Motion by Mr. Cole, seconded by Mr. Fitzsimons. Any other discussion, any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I have to remind myself, I have to wait. We're still on Zoom. Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Minutes have been approved from our previous meeting. Before we get to public comment, announcements from our chair of our committee. Again, please speak up anytime we're on Zoom. Don't feel like you're going to offend me by stepping on me. You won't. But I do want to make sure that everybody's heard when they have something to say. So speak up whenever you need to. One thing I would like to do today is make sure we've got a pretty good timeline in place. We will talk about that a little bit later on the agenda. We are going to need to have a couple more meetings before we can really finalize the policies and procedures, I believe, and we will talk about that as well. And again, continue talking to the people that you represent, please, in your classifications, and tell them what we're doing as a committee. Please let them know that if they have ideas, they need to bring them forward, hopefully to you. You bring that forward to this committee, or they can talk to us directly in the NIAA, and we will convey their thoughts as well. But please, we want to make sure as many people as possible are involved in this process as we go along. I'm going to stop the screen share for just a minute here, because we're going to move on to item number 6, which is public comment. This time provides an opportunity for citizens to address the committee about any matter not listed on the agenda. Items raised during this portion of the agenda cannot be deliberated or acted upon until notice procedures of the open meeting law have been met. Should a member of the public wish to speak on a matter not listed on the agenda, it is asked that said person complete a public comment card and submit it to an NIAA staff member prior to the opening of this item. A limit of 3 minutes per person and/or 5 minutes for the spokesperson of a group may be imposed. It is requested that comments be directed to the committee as a whole. Comments that are deemed to be irrelevant, repetitious, offensive, inflammatory, willfully disruptive, or deemed to be personal attacks will not be permitted. I was told we might have some live public comment. I have not seen that person enter into the waiting room yet. I will ask, though, at our other locations around the state, do we have any live public comment at this time? And Ms. Lotz, I will ask you specifically in the office, the NIAA, do we have anyone there?
No, there's nobody here.
Anyone else with live public comment? Okay, we've got a couple by email, one of which just came into my email here moments ago. So I'm going to get to that here really quick. If I can. Okay, this public comment is from Rich Morocco, the athletic director and football coach at Liberty High School. My biggest issue as it relates to the realignment for football of the schools in the state of Nevada and how it was manipulated to help the northern schools have a chance to win more state championships by avoiding having to play in the top classification. Moreover, we now have way too many state championships. There is absolutely no reason for 7 state champions in football when there are a total of about 105 schools that participate. We have devalued what it means to be a state champion by creating leagues based on how good or bad a team is. It would be different if the divisions were determined by enrollment or by type of school, public or private. But instead, schools were placed into divisions based on past success, rubric points. The current structure was put in place to manipulate schools into voting a particular way during the last realignment cycle. Specifically, to protect Bishop Gorman and allow them to keep playing a national schedule, and to help the northern schools avoid playing against Bishop Gorman and Liberty in the playoffs. Now we have a top classification that only has 7 teams, no regional championship, less playoff games, and has to play the same 6 teams in the regular season and postseason. This is not what's best for the sport of football in Nevada. Some will argue that it's great because they feel they have a real chance to win by not having to play against the top two teams. I would say to them that lowering standards is never a good thing, whether it's in sports or the classroom. I would like to see one of two things. One, public-private classifications for sports. This should be done to deal with the inequities between private and charter schools and public schools. I could explain how this can easily be done. Or two, go back to the regional divisions based on geography. This allows for schools to maintain natural neighborhood rivalries, save on transportation, not have students, parents, and fans traveling across the valley to play league games. I know that attendance for our away games is less because students are not going to travel to Arborview or Shadow Ridge like they would if we were playing Silverado or Desert Oasis. At the end of the season, determine who the top teams are and then play out the playoffs. You could call this the 5A or open. All the remaining teams would then play for the 4A playoffs. This makes 5 state champions instead of 7, which is more appropriate for a state our size. You can wait and see who the best teams are at the end of the season and then compete for the state title. Other benefits of this would be it saves money on playoff trophies, facilities, and travel expenses. It would also allow a northern school the opportunity to compete for the highest classification if they were good enough that year or if they wanted to. It also doesn't predetermine league placements off a broken rubric, but rather you would be classified by your merit. Thank you, Rich Morocco. Okay. We do have a second public comment that was sent in to us, and this is on page number 9 of your packet. It is from Sean Ryan, who is the principal at Whitell High School. Dear Realignment Committee, I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to express my gratitude for the hard work the committee puts into evaluating school league participation. I would like to propose that the committee consider the unique circumstances of small schools with fluctuating enrollment numbers. I believe that providing these schools with a pathway to be considered for addition to the league after a successful independent year could pave the way for greater inclusivity and growth within our sports programs. Thank you for considering this suggestion. Best regards, Sean Ryan, Principal. I believe I misspoke. I also have a third public comment, and this one I will share screen on as well. This one came to us a little bit after the deadline. Just a moment here. I apologize. I've got to make my way back into the Zoom meeting. Find this in my 37 windows. Okay, again, this comes from Ty Wakefield at Virgin Valley. Realignment Committee members, thank you for wanting to get realignment right for 2025-28. I appreciate how you've welcomed feedback and sought proposals from coaches. My reasons in the associated proposal is below. My use of private schools also encompasses charter schools because they enroll students the same way. The rubric is an inadequate measure for determining competitive balance between public and private schools in 3A boys basketball. Heavily relying on enrollment counts only reveals a potential number of athletes per school, not the athletic potential within each athlete at that school. The current competitive imbalance of 3A boys basketball is self-evident. Combining the 2022 seasons of LOSI with the 2023 seasons of Matter East, Democracy Prep, and Meadows shows a record of 49 wins and 1 loss. Both state championships won by private schools. Stricter regulation, enrollment numbers, enrollment and multipliers, or changing of other rubric criterion won't achieve competitive balance in 3A boys basketball. Competitive balance will occur when public schools compete against public schools and private schools compete against private schools. 3 reasons why our current 3A boys basketball has not achieved competitive balance. Public schools' zone of attendance limits natural recruitment. Private schools have no geographical limit. They can foster the natural recruitment of enrolled students that excel at basketball. This is how the fewer students enrolled at the above listed private schools dominate the many students enrolled at public 3A schools. It is impossible for private schools to be regulated in the same manner without a zone of attendance. Arbitrarily creating one would be detrimental to their overall prosperity. Counting transfers towards a rubric would not have changed Matter East, Democracy Prep, or Meadows 3A placement. They would have been selected for 3A realignment. Planning to achieve competitive balance through regulating public and private schools in the same manner is incongruent with achieving fairness. The students don't enroll in the same manner and shouldn't compete in the same division. Private schools should continue to prosper and function as they have been, free to enroll without geographic restriction. They appear content to be spread throughout varying classifications based upon their naturally occurring athletic recruitment. Some private school teams excel in a sport while others have less success. For the above reasons, I believe the only way to achieve competitive balance in 3A boys basketball is separating into public and private 3A divisions. It would be similar to 5A football. 5A separates based on enrollment, geography, and competitive results. 3A would be based by enrollment process, geography, and competitive results by the following 3 provisions. 1, any year within a realignment period, a team requesting promotion to a higher classification is automatically granted promotion. A bottom 4A team or subsequent 4A alternate is relegated to 3A. 2, if a team from 4A is relegated and wins the 3A state championship the following season, they would be automatically promoted following the state championship season. The past example of having Clark and Desert Pines in the 3A South was given as a cautionary evidence that going back to a southern public region would be unwise. I disagree. With current athletic basketball talent congregated in the top of 4A and private schools, it is the perfect time to go back to the past. The problems wouldn't be repeated, but the situation improved, especially with 3 promotion. We are past 3 minutes. Apologize. I will send this public comment because it was late out to our committee. The 3-minute rule does not allow me to continue reading it. We do thank everybody for the public comment. Is there any other before I move on? I don't want to skip anyone. Okay. Let us get back to our agenda, and item number 7 on that agenda is our timeline for realignment. And if you look at pages 10 through 13 for your packet, which I've started page 10 up on this screen momentarily. Sorry, I have 2 packets up. This is chaos. There's that timeline for the fall 2023 through spring 2025 process. That's what our last committee put together. There's a whole lot of documentation in there. Again, hopefully you have read through it. I will tell you that what we do today doesn't need to quite be all of this just yet. Okay. We will put something together that is far more formal, that will go before our board of control, either in their next meeting, which will be coming up in the summer. That's when I'd like to get it there. I'm hopeful we're done by then. We need to take a little more time. We take a little more time. I really don't want to. I'd like to get this timeline knocked out, if not today, then in our next realignment committee meeting to take that to the board for their approval. Let me get through this packet real quick on these pages, and then having shared with this committee as well earlier today, a document that we would propose out of our office, we think right now makes sense for a timeline going forward. Before I get to that, let me call on our legal counsel, Paul Anderson, real quick. Mr. Anderson, I think hopefully you've had a little bit of time to review our previous timeline and the one that was sent out today. I believe, sir, we would still be in line with everything we need to do as a committee and would be able to get through the board and be in line with everything in the NIAA. But before we get too deep down this rabbit hole, sir, I'd like to make sure we have your opinion on this.
So what are you looking for in terms of my opinion then?
Making sure that the timeline we just showed and the timeline that we are putting forward now and was sent out to this committee this morning, that we're going to be in line with everything with the NIAA and that would be able to get this passed by our board in the June meeting and be able to go with what we are proposing before we ask the board that question.
Yeah, I mean, it looks okay to me at this point.
Okay.
So.
And let me pull that one up on our screen. And again, hopefully everybody, you can see the possible realignment timeline in front of you. For our spring and our summer, what we are looking at is the obvious creation, adoption of the timeline policies and procedures for this committee. That full timeline adoption, again, if we don't do that in this meeting, we would like to do that in our next meeting. Our creation of policies and procedures, that's going to need to wait a little while, right? We still haven't heard from the different proposals that we have. We need to go through those. There are some still to come. There's one coming from the Southern Nevada baseball coaches. There's one coming from our office that is taking more time to develop than I would like it to, but it's a lot of work. After we create those policies and procedures, and after we think we've got what we need and go ahead and adopt those, we would then need to have a hearing of our membership to see if anybody would like to appeal those policies and procedures. At the end of that hearing, we would have the adoption of the full realignment process by our committee to move forward to our Board of Control. And the way I see this working is having another meeting in April, probably in about 3 weeks, one more meeting of this committee virtually the first week of May before we get into total chaos in May. I'd like to bring us back together either in late August or early September to kick around those ideas one more time. Maybe something else has come up after the completion of our spring sports that you think we need to include. But I am looking at tentatively a meeting date of maybe September 10th for the hearing of our policies and procedures and the full adoption to send forward to our Board of Control at their September meeting, which is September 24th and 25th. I know this is a lot. If we look forward to the end of our fall sports in 2024, we have a suggested date of December 3rd for our committee to meet to possibly have our full, depending on what we do, 2A and 1A placement and a placement by school, potentially by sport for our other classifications. That would be our initial placement meeting. We wouldn't place anybody before December 3rd. Keeping in mind the end of the football season on our master activities calendar is November 26th. Also keeping in mind, the Winter National AD Conference starts on December 13th. I'd like to have the appeals hearing and our final recommendations summed up on December 11th. And when we start talking about these meetings in September and December, those are going to need to be in-person meetings. Be prepared for that, please. We would have our hearings on December 11th. Take that forward to our Board of Control for the January 14th and 15th meeting. Hopefully they approve it. If so, people can start scheduling fall sports for 2025. In the winter, for our winter sports, those seasons would end on February 22nd. We would have our winter sports class placement by school. And again, depending on what we do, the 1A and 2A may be done already. All depends on what we do on our policies and procedures. Maybe looking at March 4th for that with the appeals hearings where the schools come and appeal their placement on March 12th. Final realignment committee recommendation on March 12th to go forward to our Board of Control. They meet for their spring meeting on April 1 and 2. The reason we're earlier there, we have spring breaks that get in the way of our meetings in March. And I would like to try to stay away from as many of those spring breaks as we can, because if we're going to have people coming in to appeal, I don't want them appealing from the beach or feeling like they have to turn their spring break away, okay? Going forward then for our spring sports, this is going to get really tight as we end our spring season on May 17th of 2025. We would have our class placement meeting on May 21st, our spring sports appeals hearings and the final recommendation on May 29th. And the reason this is really tight, Board of Control meetings on June 3 and 4. So we're not going to have a whole lot of time in there. I threw a lot of information at you in 4 pages in 10 minutes or less. Please, at this point, if you have questions or comments, please speak up. Is there something wrong with this? Is there something we need to change? Is there something you like? Do you need more time to digest this?
Bart, this is Dallas Larson. So by the time we hit that first fall meeting in December, we've already established what kind of rubric we're using for every sport, whether it's fall, winter, spring. These next meetings are to provide how we're going to base the placements for fall, winter, spring, correct?
You are 100% correct, sir. Everything that you see here in spring, summer, I'm going to highlight it. Everything that you see in that little area there, that all would need to be completed so our board can adopt it in the September 24 and 25 board meetings. So we would, in other words, what that spring, summer is, we're creating the rules we're playing by. We're going to have a hearing of our members to make sure they understand the rules we're playing by. And you mentioned rubric in there, Mr. Larson. I love that you mentioned it. We haven't decided if we're playing by one. That's something we still need to decide. But everything that we're going to do, all the rules that we're going to have, those need to be set. We need to have a membership hearing on it. We need to give the people the opportunity to have their say, to make any appeals. I'd like to have that all set by September 10th, 2024, so that we take that forward to our board, and our board can make changes. If they want to make changes, they can approve it if they want to approve it. Hopefully they're not sending it back, and we would need to have another meeting to redo everything. But yes, have the rules. Everybody know what the rules are. Set the rules into play before we place any team anywhere. Other questions or comments? Mr. Anderson.
Bart, this is Paul. So I'm trying to remember, and I think this is how we did it this last time around. But in terms of the various seasons and the appeal hearings, did we hold them in both ends of the state each season, or did we hold them just in one end of the state, you know, where schools had to travel up or down to appeal if they were going to appeal?
We got a little convoluted because of what happened with football in the fall stuff.
Right.
That's kind of what took us everywhere. For our winter and spring, we had to throw, let me back up. For our people who are new to this process, because of the football adding those extra divisions as we went along, it created a whole bunch of extra meetings during the process. I want to say there were about 5 extra meetings. What we ended up doing in the winter and spring, we would hold those placement meetings in the north and then hold the appeals meetings where we thought there would be more appeals in the south. So we held the placement on one half of the state, the appeals in the other half of the state when we got into winter and spring. Fall was just its own beast altogether. But I think with the permission of this committee, what we could do, I obviously our committee would need to meet in person on all of these meetings from September going forward. But I believe if there is something that would prohibit somebody from traveling to the other end of the state to give an appeal, we've allowed for things in our different meetings to be virtual if for some reason somebody absolutely could not attend. Obviously, we would want to strongly encourage them to be there in person. But if for some reason they couldn't get there, if this committee's okay with that, I think we would be okay with letting an appeal be heard virtually if we needed to. Mr. Anderson, are we allowed to do that under our rules and under law?
I think, yeah. Well, we can certainly do it. You know, under the law, that's not a problem. It's just, I think last time I think we actually did that with some people. So, but I was just wondering from the standpoint, if we were going to have them hold them in both ends of the state each season, then that's going to double up the number of meetings to have appeals heard.
Yeah, and I don't think we need to. Again, I think once we get through those fall appeals, that's generally where in this process, where we've heard the bulk of them. And the 1A and 2A, depending on what they do, if they do this similar to what we've done in past realignment cycles, the 1A and 2A is set in that fall. They just set everything, and then we go forward. We don't have to do that in this committee. All up to what this committee decides. But I think, again, to save a lot of grief on a lot of people's parts, I think if we held those placement meetings in one half of the state and the appeals meetings in the other half of the state, that would be beneficial to everyone. Other committee members, and and voting both and voting and not voting. Your thoughts on this, please.
Bart,
Yeah, go ahead.
Mark, I like what you've done with the dates um, as far as, certain dates, like avoiding the national conferences. And I like how you have them done just before the Board of Control, so we can actually take something for them. I realize the spring's going to be a little tight, but I hope as a goal of the committee, we can not have the fall football thing cause us a lot of grief, where we can get those hearings done, get those appeals done, get the plan in place. So I like what you've done here with the dates.
Thank you. Mr. Marcouzis, you have your hand up. Please go ahead, sir.
Just kind of a follow-up that we're just kind of going to make a decision on the framework of dates and times, not necessarily the kind of the meat on the bone, so to speak, and some of the details with that. Okay. Thank you so much.
And I will say right now, what you see on here also for suggested dates doesn't mean we have to lock into December 3rd and December 11th per se. If half of our committee is tied up somewhere else on December 3rd, that's just a suggested date. Count that as maybe a date range. And I would also say to this committee, we have this as a possible action item for this meeting. If you want more time to kick this around before our next meeting, we can take action on it at our next meeting in April and go through everything then again. I don't want to rush you on this. I certainly don't want to rush any part of this process. But I would like your thoughts on this, because again, this isn't Bart Davis's committee. There's nothing about this that is me or just our staff. This is everybody here. Mr. Marcouzis?
Yeah, just sorry, new guy on the block here with
No,
this.
you're good.
Just in past realignment experiences, would any proposals or suggestions brought to this committee deviate this timeline in any way, or this timeline still can stay strong regardless of proposals being made in subsequent meetings or whatnot?
It's a great question. And I can only answer it by saying, we don't know what's coming to us proposal wise. We didn't know what was going to happen with football the last time around. And that obviously caused a whole lot of restructuring on the fly. So to give you a full and clear, I can't promise that for sure. But I think with what we've got planned, depending on how this committee wants to handle things, we can stick to a timeline. This is something I've run by a few people, our current executive director, our soon to be executive director who's with us today. We all seem to think at first glance, at least, this is something we can stick by. Mr. Jackson, I don't mean to put you on the spot, sir, but I know you and I talked about this earlier today too, and you having been a part of several of these as we've gone along. This, I think for both of us, seems like something we can do. Yes, sir?
Well, yeah, I think that dovetails nicely into what Lou just mentioned. Here's the thing. Right now, currently, the 1A and the 2A alignment is pretty much enrollment based. And then they figure out the geography. So using the rubric for 3, 4, and 5 means we need a little bit of time to get those numbers. But if this committee were to come back and say, we're scrapping the rubric, we're only doing alignment based on enrollment numbers, we do the same thing they do in the 1 or 2. But at the same time, I don't think we should close that timeline that tight and leave ourselves the time to work through it, because I do foresee some unique proposals coming forth from different people. This is a new committee with a lot of new members. So I think the timeline works well, Bart. But Lou, to your point, I think that's the thing. It's a working document. It allows us the time to get things done, but it also allows us the time to establish what our protocols are going to be and follow them and adjust as necessary.
Hey, Bart?
Yeah, Mr. Polzian.
Hey, Tony Polzing, 485A South. I think to back up also, what was brought up there by soon-to-be Director Jackson and Mr. Marcouzis, wasn't that a similar situation where the baseball coaches did bring in a new a proposal, but we were kind of hamstrung by the timeline, correct? It refresh my memory, please.
Yeah, I mean, we've had several proposals over time that our committee kind of sat there and looked at the people who were proposing and went, where were you? Where have you been during this? We're already down the road. And some of them even came to our board of control. And our board of control said, this should have been done a while ago. So yeah, we are trying through this process, through what we're doing and asking our different representatives on this committee to please get out and talk to your people to make sure that we have included everybody as early in this process as we can. But what happens if the right idea comes along 5 months from now, 6 months from now, and we all look and go, whoa, wait a minute, this is what we should have been doing all along. Mr. Jackson, I think you're 100% right on that. You don't want to pigeonhole yourself into something too terribly early. And I think this gives us the opportunity to have the flexibility we've had, but also by getting out early and talking to other people. And I'll tell you, I've been out talking to coaches myself, and I want to get out and see more of them. If we include everybody from the start, hopefully that problem gets solved, and this timeline is something we can follow. Anyone else, please speak up on this. This is a timeline that we're asking everybody to follow or make changes to it so that it's something you feel we can better follow.
Dallas Larson, 3A South. But just so once again, this spring summer is the proposal time, is what I like. The baseball, even though we're this spring summer, all the meetings we'll be holding. But once we hit that December, we're putting teams in at that point. But Tim, are you saying that if all of a sudden we have the flexibility now where the baseball coaches in spring of 24, 25, we can now change kind of the process to allow that?
No, Dallas, what I was saying was this: by putting the timeline that Bart has put together here in place, that allows us to look at all possibilities, regardless of what they are, however they come to us or how this group agrees to it. So in other words, what I'm saying is this: we are not beholden to using the rubric and then having to wait till the end of May to align spring. If this group during the course of the next few months comes back and says, no, we're going to use this method to do it, if that doesn't require us to wait to then we can start actually manipulating and preparing. At the same time, it also says, hey, listen, in the past, we've done X, Y, and Z. It allows that timeline to remain in place, and we can meet all the needs and the requirements without extending, like Lou mentioned with football, or Bart mentioned with football. We had a couple extra meetings there, because if I'm not mistaken, in the last alignment, we aligned all of fall except football and had to come back to it. So that prevents that from occurring in this manner. And I like this plan. That's why I want the timeline to be agreed upon by everyone, so that we can look at it from an entire perspective of what possibly could happen, what don't we know could happen, and do we have enough placement to continue to operate.
Yeah, that is my agreement, Tim. Is I would like to have everyone, like I said, all the coaches associations know now is the time, so that we can see all those proposals. Maybe the baseball proposal works for basketball. Maybe, oh, that was a good one. Maybe do it for basketball and all that, so that when we hit fall, we don't have to worry about, oh, now there's something different. Fall, winter, and spring are just, here's where the schools go, and then the appeals on that from there, correct? Bart?
Correct, Mr. Larson. What we basically got sitting here in front of us is we've got 6 months to create the rules we're going to play by. And that gives time for everybody to get information to us in the next 6 months. Again, we may meet in April, discuss some more ideas. In May, discuss more, and that spurs somebody else to say, yeah, but what if you took this idea and then added this to it? So when we come back and get everything hopefully done in September, when we get to these December meetings, and I was about to point at my screen and realized I'd look like an idiot doing it. When we get to these December meetings down here, we have the rules of the game. We're simply applying the rules to the information that played out in front of us, right? And then we have the appeals of that. If you don't like where you were, based on whatever we chose to put you wherever we chose to put you, you've got your chance to come in and appeal that and say, but we think we should be here, and here's why. Does that make sense to everybody? Hopefully.
Yeah, and Bart, just to be absolutely clear, once we agree on those, and once you get to that December meeting, and more importantly, once that December meeting goes to the Board of Control as a recommendation for approval and is approved, that's it. That's when the fall sports cannot come back in and say, oh, we have a different idea now.
Right.
Because that's approved, that's done, that's finished. And we go from there.
Right. And Mr. Anderson, thank you. While you're tuned in, I know you need to leave shortly here because you've got some important business to attend to as well. Our Board of Control has suggested to us pretty heavily that they want all appeals to come before the realignment committee. It's not that the board can't change its tune on that or change what it wants to do on that. Mr. Anderson, I believe in our past meetings, that's been something that's been pretty heavily stressed by our board.
That has, and the only glitch to that now is with the new realignment regulation that just was recently passed that adopts this procedure that we're now using. It kind of requires appeals to go to the board, but I think the board can delegate that to the realignment committee, which they've done in the past. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. My other question is, if we're choosing to look at a timeline today, can we adopt this today, or do we need to have a hearing of all member schools first for them to look at this too and make sure that that's good?
I think the realignment committee can make the recommendation to adopt this timeline today.
Mhm.
You could do that. But you still, I think you've mentioned earlier, the schools still have an opportunity to come in and challenge it, or not challenge it, but comment on it and make any suggestions that they have, because this won't be approved until the September board meeting, correct?
The timeline would be approved in June.
June, I'm sorry. Okay. So yeah, I mean, you could do that and then set up a time for appeals for schools. This would have to be circulated to all the schools, and then with a date certain where if they had any concern over the timeline, policies and procedures to come and have their appeal heard before this committee. Right?
Yeah, correct. I asked that in case somebody wants to approve it. I also kind of, as I've gone through talking endlessly, have kind of realized too that this group being new, maybe you need some time to look over this timeline and make sure that it's something that we can adhere to. And maybe we come back in our next meeting and have put this out to everybody and said, look, this is what we think we're going to do. And we come back in April and approve it then. Doesn't change what we're doing now. Doesn't change when it goes to the Board of Control. But maybe you want a little bit more time to digest this as well. Thoughts from everyone?
If we propose it right now, though, wouldn't that then our next meeting allow for those other schools to or have a way of saying that, adding, we don't like it, so we could readjust the proposal after that, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it make it easier to change it by the members saying this is what it is, and then having the appeal after that? Because if we wait to the next meeting, then the appeals have to happen at the meeting after that.
We can do that, yes. And Mr. Anderson, speak up if I'm incorrect on that as well.
No, I think that's what we just said. So you could do that. So go ahead if that's how the committee wants to move.
I'll propose that we adopt this timeline for the procedures, Dallas Larson, 3A South, at this meeting, so we can get it out to schools and let them see it and go from there. But do I need to have the caveat about the exact dates on this, Bart, for that motion?
I think you can if you'd like. It's your motion. I can't tell you how to make it, but I think if you would like to, you could certainly make it that way.
With the caveat of the specific dates for the meetings in fall and winter will be adjusted as needed.
So that is a motion from you, Mr. Larson?
Yeah, I'll motion to adopt that.
Do we have a second?
Lou Marcouzis would like to second Mr. Larson's motion.
Thank you, Mr. Marcouzis. Any further discussion? Any questions on this? Now's the time to ask.
Mine is more of a statement, Bart, and maybe this is for later, but as from my experience from schools, it seems like everything's fine until names get put on the paper on where they're going to go, and then it hits the fan. As we create these different procedures. I don't know if there's a way to foreshadow, this is where teams might be. If we adopt it this way, here's where schools might be if this is the adoption, just so it's more of a, so it's not the midnight surprise, to coin a term there for some schools. Is that,
Oh,
so just a statement for coming up, but
that's a
Tony
that's a big-
Posing, Tony Posing, 485A South. I think to Dallas's point, I think Bart's out ahead of a lot of that. Because I do know there have been some meetings already with coaches. So I'm hoping that some of this preemptive strikes, for lack of a better way to put it, because Dallas is right, that the feelings get hurt when the names get on the paper. But I think there have been a lot of meetings that hopefully we don't run into the same thing with football that we did last year, because I know there have been meetings with coaches, and I do know there are proposals out there. But I do think this timeline, now that, if we have it, we can start seeing them and maybe head off a lot of those problems before we have them.
Thank you, Mr. Polzian. I will tell you also, Mr. Larson, I'd love to say we'd be able to foreshadow where everybody's going to be. Problem is we don't know the rules we're playing by yet. So it's kind of hard to say that we'll be able to do that for sure. But I will tell you that, there's a lot of us that are heavily invested in this, been through this more times we can't count. We'll do anything we can to help the process in this. Certainly. Any other questions, any other comments, any other discussion on this? Hearing none. We have a motion on the table from Mr. Larson, seconded by Mr. Polzian, to accept this current timeline with the caveat that the dates specified may change a little bit.
second was by Canyon Spring.
I'm sorry, Mr. Marcouzes. Yes, Mr.
Mr.
Marcouzes. I'm sorry about that. Mr. Marcouzes had the second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you, everybody. The motion passes. Let's move on to item number 8, which is our discussion of policies and procedures. This is just kind of a kickoff point. That's all this is, sharing some ideas right now. This is not anything that we're taking action on, but we've gotten some proposals in already. Art Anderson, Mr. Anderson, I'm going to ask you if you would. You've got a couple of these proposals that you sent our way from people you represent. These are in our packet on page 14. The Northern Nevada football proposal, I believe, is one that you sent forward to our office. I'd like to turn it over to you, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Art Anderson, if you'd like to give us any comments on that proposal, and I'll get it up on our screen here momentarily.
Yeah, just real quick, the Northern Nevada football realignment proposal came from the Northern Nevada Football Coaches Association. That association mainly represents the 5A, 3A coaches, some of the 3A coaches. There is no 4A in the North, and this is an idea of how to possibly create a 4A in the North, if possible. Again, not all the classifications have seen this yet. This is brand new to some of those, the 2A and possibly some of those schools in the 3A, but it seemed like the schools in the 5A and what would become the 4A were in favor of this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. As you can see, they've got the schools divided up by classification on there, even a potential regular season schedule. And this would just apply to the North, as you said, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, this would be a North only. So then we would have to get into how a region tournament would be set up and everything like that.
Any questions from our group about the proposal put forward by the Northern Nevada football coaches?
Tony Posing, 485A South. Hey, Art, just because I've seen how these things have played out in the past, are the 3A North good with this?
Everybody is seeing it, Tony, right now for the first time. So we do not have a vote for all schools. I asked the president of the association, who also happens to be the Spanish Springs head football coach, to get a vote and I don't know where we're at that. I apologize. I thought this was
No,
very
you're
early
okay.
in the process. So at this point, by the next meeting, there would be a vote on this.
I do see I think a possible issue with schools that be moving 2 classifications in one alignment, which I don't believe it would be able to happen. Going from 3A to 5A.
And yep, Dallas, I explained that to my football coach, the president, and we would have to change the structure of how we are going to realign, if that's even a possibility. Which I think right now, until it's concrete, that we would have to justify allowing a team to move up or down possibly 2 classifications.
And I'm assuming
Go
this
ahead,
does
Mr.
away with the protective status of those 3A schools that would have to be amended as well, it looks like on this. For schools under the 1,300 for 3A.
Yes, in order to get put into what would then become a 4A, right? That would have to change as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are just the 2 things I see as a 3A. South seeing this today for the first time. So those are the 2 things I saw right away on that would be, I don't even know, Bart, are we able to change those kind of things? And is that a?
Historically, we have allowed teams to voluntarily go up more than 1 league at a time, historically.
Slam being one example for one too, that in wrestling that went up to 5A.
Correct.
I would also say that, again, kind of as we said in our last meeting, we do need to play by the NAC, the Nevada Administrative Code. And I know our legal counsel has spent a whole lot of time in front of the legislative people and the Legislative Counsel Bureau on this, and would like to not have to spend a whole lot more time in front of them. But if we feel the best way to go forward is by changing things that are in the NAC, then we propose that to the Board of Control and see what they say about that and see how that goes forward. I don't think, Mr. Larson, and to our other committee members, there are a whole lot of rules in front of us right now that we have to 100% play by. We have the opportunity to make them and see what we want to play by. Again, got to go through our board. They've got to approve it. We may come up with some great idea that goes very far away from what we've done, and the board may say, no, no, no. So be prepared for that. But I also don't think we have to necessarily abide by what we've gone by this last cycle, 2 cycles ago, 3 cycles ago.
So Bart, if we do want to change, Dallas Larson again, 3A, if we do, it seems like we would want to get those changed before we pursued. It's what comes first? We want this, and then we pursue the changing of the NAC, or hey, let's change the NAC so we can pursue this option. What's the best route to go?
And I'm, again, Paul Henderson, I'm leaning on you like a crutch today.
So here's the thing with changing the NAC. I mean, I really feel that we have the realignment regulation based on what was recently passed right where it should be. And, if you want to make changes, I think something you have to look at as a committee and be careful of is you don't make changes to fit just a situation that might come up this year. It has to be something that's sort of a pervasive problem that you see that's going to always be a problem. Otherwise, we're always chasing our tail and we're constantly, seeking amendments, which take, a significant amount of time to do. And theoretically, you really should not, be implementing changes prior to those, the regulation actually being amended. So I think that's as a group, if you see something that's glaring that you feel is going to be a significant problem based on how the current regulation reads, then yeah, maybe we ought to take a look at it. And personally, I see it at this point as being about where we want it to be, because it's got some flexibility to it, which is what I like. That's just kind of how my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Other comments on this first proposal?
Tony, 485A South, can I ask a quick question here? So just because member Cole brought it up, if I remember right, Slam chose to go 5A their own. Would a school like say for instance, Truckee, for example, would they have the option to say, no, we only want to move up one level per regulation? Would that be something to consider? And I know this is just a rough draft. I understand that. I'm just asking the question, and you can mute me if you need to.
Mr. Art Anderson, I don't know if you want to handle that first. I will also say before you get to that point, keep in mind, everybody, no matter what we propose, no matter when we start putting teams on the line, everybody has that ability to come back to the realignment committee and appeal their placement wherever we put them. But Mr. Art Anderson, if you want to handle Mr. Polzian's comment.
Yeah, that was a concern that I had as well when the proposal was brought to me. And I think if something like this is going to work, because of that appeal process, all the schools involved in the North would have to agree that this is the way that they would want to align. Example, Truckee, Elko, and Fallon are perfect examples. That we have initial indication from at least, I believe, 2 of those schools that they would be for this, but it would have to be all 3 would be willing to do that. Correct.
Thank you. Mr. Marcouzis, you've had your hand up here.
Yes, sir. This I should probably just not raise my hand then. This is a feast or famine group, it looks like, to Mr. Davis.
Yeah. Jump in with the mouth open, teeth ready.
I love it. No, I guess just kind of coming in here, I struggle with seeing a proposal like this at this juncture, because I think even like from just some of Mr. Anderson's comments and some of the comments from other board members, it's like kind of the what comes first, the chicken or the egg. So if we see this and people like it, but then a proposal comes in that could potentially maybe alter this particular proposal, that it's back to square one in some instances. And then I guess my follow-up or my question to Mr. Anderson is is the Northern Nevada president of the Coaches Association working with the Southern one so that there is some type of potential alignment? Because I only reason why I say that is because I know that the Southern Nevada Coaches Association, from a football standpoint, there is some discussion around some shifts as well in the way things do business with football. So I'm only saying that not to get into the weeds specifically with football, but this is kind of why this is a challenge to even look at something like this now without knowing what we're going to try to do the start of 25.
And I'll try to answer both those questions real quick. I think one of the problems we ran into in the last realignment committee that's kind of been hit on today is we didn't get a lot of ideas at the very beginning until it came to the end of each season. So I think that's part of the process for this new one is, and I apologize, we're done with school here. There might be some announcements. Is we I think just getting these out here, yeah, this might cause some confusion, but at least it might be something just to look at, just to see if there's some possibilities to it. It's believe me, it's not concrete. The second part of that question is I wish the Northern Nevada Coaches Association and the Southern Nevada Coaches Association would communicate more, would be a desire. They both know who they are. They need to talk more.
I was going to say, Art, because as I recall, Bart read a letter from Rick Morocco to start the public comment off, right, Bart?
Right. I mean, it's Mr. Levitt, I know you've got your hand up. I'm going to get to you in just a second. I mean, I would caution anybody in what we're doing today, right? And what we may be doing at our next meeting. This is just a giant whiteboard right now of different ideas that we're throwing out there. I don't think we ever see a first idea and lock on it immediately, right? I don't think that that's going to be beneficial for any of us in this room. But I think if we throw the more ideas out there and the more that gets around, it might brainstorm into what we actually need it to be. I will also caution, I've had discussions about the proposal that's going to come forward from our office where I've had somebody look at me and go, well, that's a great idea. Well, maybe we don't know until it actually plays out. What might look like a great idea to one of us on paper is going to look terrible to somebody else. Mr. Levitt.
Well, a couple of comments. First of all, in response to the proposal that's on the table, it's strictly a proposal for what football would look like in the North. And as was just mentioned, we did hear public comment from the representative, Coach Morocco in the South, who represents the football coaches in Southern Nevada. My first question is, have they offered, he certainly had his comments, have they offered or indicating that they're bringing forward some sort of a proposal for the South or for the state with respect to football? So that's my first question.
To
Yeah, so-
me, they have not. I will let other people on the committee answer that, though.
Yeah, so I would hope we would, I think we have to do, I think that's part of our responsibility, right? To facilitate that conversation. I would hope.
And that's the next piece I wanted to bring up. This is, with this being a proposal that strictly just speaks to what it would look like in the North. I think it's still the response. Before we can start looking at something like this, doesn't this committee need to determine what football is going to look like statewide? Bart, I don't know if I'm articulating it well. It seems like it's a little bit the cart before the horse. We've got to understand what football is going to look like across the state before we can start aligning our leagues in the North or the South.
Yeah, and I would be very reticent to again, this committee, we just passed a timeline that said we're not going to put a name on paper and anything until we get to December, right? So I don't necessarily think that maybe this proposal is something that, or any proposal we see is something that we lock in and go, okay, well, these 6 go here, these 6 go there.
Right.
We just don't know who the 6 are right now, right? It's just, is this an idea to put 6, 6, 6, 6, 5 across there?
Yeah, I think, with all due respect, though, I think if we need to quit pretending like that we need to quit being naive a little bit and pretending like, hey, that it doesn't matter and that we're not playing games at the North and the South level. And we need to have conversations about how do we bring the North and the South together, put them in a room and say, hey, let's work this out so that we can have a conversation, something that's going to work for all of us, so that we can have true competition at the state level between North and South, something that works for all of us, right? At the 3A level, the 4A level, and the 5A level, because I've been here for 24 years. Some of you have been here a lot longer than that. And it's really felt like, hey, there's just this competition between the North and the South, and there's these perceived battle lines, right? Like for always of, hey, what's going on? And we want this and they want that, and we want this and they want that. And people are just never in the room having the conversation, right? And Art, you said it, right? I wish they would have a conversation, right? And I wish they'd have a conversation. And at the end of the day, I just want what's best for, like, I haven't enjoyed the fact that, my 4A team in a couple of sports haven't had a chance to go travel to play up north for a true quote unquote state championship for certain sports, right? Because I would love a chance to do that, just because coming from where I came from, you got to do that. You had a chance to go travel to the Unidome to go play for a football state championship, or you got to go to Des Moines or wherever it was in Iowa to do those things. And I think that's part of participating in high school athletics, is getting a chance to go participate against other places. And so just going and playing in a high school gym isn't the same thing as going somewhere else. And so, especially for football, we have to get people in a room somehow. And I understand what you're saying, Bart, is, hey, let's not latch onto a proposal. I'm not suggesting we do that, but we have to figure out as the representatives for our groups, hey, how are we gonna get people in the room to figure it out? And whether that ends up being, I heard somebody talk about in the public comments, private charter leagues, or different things like that. I don't, at the end of the day, care what it is, but we need to figure out something that's going to work for all kids in the state of Nevada. And I don't own any of the ideas. I don't own any of the thought processes, but we need to lock people in the room and figure it out so that all kids in the state of Nevada can have an opportunity to participate in high school athletics, especially football, because that seems to be the big problem.
Bart?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I just have a quick comment. I think we're getting off topic on the agenda. I think all the comments are good. I'm not being critical of that, but I think the purpose of this meeting was to look at the timelines, policies, and procedures. I think you've done that. This discussion is good, and I think what the direction should be to the various members of the committee. those in the north that match classification wise with those in the south, to start getting together now, to have those discussions and hopefully come back at our next meetings as we start moving down the line with some of these proposals, or seeing if there can be some agreement or if there's going to be disagreement. So again, I think all these comments are fine, but I think that's where we need to be moving at this point.
Mr. Jackson, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I want to echo what Paul just said. I think we went down a rabbit hole, and I think we need to get back out onto the agenda. I think the items for today's agenda were to start to gather these and let the committee take a look at them and see where they stand, where we feel we're coming from, and move forward in that direction. At this point right now, I think we spent as much time on this topic as we should, and we should move forward with look and say, we have the ones that you've provided us, Bart. The other one from Mr. Anderson. We have proposal number 3 from input from coaches. It looks like we have something from Spanish Springs about wrestling, and looking into the NIAA. There's a couple other ones in there. I think right now what I would recommend is perhaps seeing if there's anything that the group has brought. Like, I don't know if any member has said, hey, I've got something that was sent to me that we should share those out, because I don't think we're at the point where we should be dissecting. I think we should be amassing. And I'm going to step away from it. I'm going to turn my camera off. I'll be right back.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. No, that's exactly, you're kind of reading what I've got on my sheet right here, and I don't know how you're managing to do that, but good for you. I do think when we play this chicken or the egg game, we kind of need to see what's out there before we know what's out there and what we're going to play by. Because again, I don't want to get us locked into something where 2, 5, 6 weeks down the road, we see something else and go, oh, well, that's a better idea. Let's go this way instead. I'd just like to share ideas right now, do that in the next meeting too. And then we get to a point where we start to pare it down. Mr. Levitt, anything else you wanted to add to that at this point?
No, I think that was what I was getting at. I mean, to me, we've ended up with these hybrids for this sport and that sport, and we've heard baseball coaches want something more like football has, and we've heard baseball coaches whisper in ears about it should look like this or it should look like that. And so my point only was that the work of the committee right now is that we're focusing more on a statewide structure or again, those policies that we're going to follow in terms of looking at football proposals and baseball proposals for specific realignments and placing schools on the line. And so I thought we were just a little bit premature in looking at something that actually puts names on the line. What I would like to know, or what I think is purposeful, is starting to have a discussion of what football may look like across the state, and if baseball is going to look like that, and if basketball is going to look like that. So sort of some overarching ideas of what realignment can look like. And I don't think we're going to see that in the proposals necessarily.
Thank you, Mr. Levitt. I'm going to get this off my screen right now, so we stop talking about that football one for right now, and I don't cause any other problems.
Bart, can I
real quick, along with what what Bob just said, those proposals do need to come in, because that was part of the problem, is that baseball proposal came in at the very last minute, and we couldn't do anything with that baseball proposal from the South. And if they don't start bringing those proposals forward right now, then we're going to struggle to work with them when we get past the fall season anyway. So I didn't mean to start this firestorm, but this was simply just something that could work, or we could adjust it to make it work.
Mr. Larson.
Yeah, Dallas Larson 3. This is what I thought we were doing today as well, was just looking at certain proposals as ideas, not voting on them. This is just going to be some ones floated out there. But this is what I said I liked, was I see the proposal, what it entails, and then above it actually, hey, this is what, if it passes, what it'd look like. Now the 3A South, I'm looking at this going, if this is statewide, where how would this adjust? Not that I'm voting on it today, but do I like parts of this or not? And then we have a little point out, well, if we can't do this. So this is what I thought we were doing with proposals, not voting on them. Here's ideas, input, move to the next one, right?
We're definitely not voting on them. It's not an action item. We can't vote on them. So this is what I had planned at least.
Yeah,
Let's move forward real quick. I know we've got some other proposals sitting out there that aren't in our packet, and I want to make sure we get to everything, and I don't want to keep you forever. Large school wrestling proposal, Mr. Anderson. I'll let you sum this one up quickly and we can move along.
I will be very quick, and I don't plan on talking this much in the future. I apologize that I'm
No, you're good. You're good.
keeping everybody. This was proposed. This is part of the thing, like that baseball proposal. This proposal by Spanish Springs High School, but representing the Northern Nevada wrestling schools. This one came a little bit too late in the proposals for realignment last year. I just wanted to get it out there again as a possible idea for restructuring the state tournament into a larger, more meaningful bracket. I believe that would call for a 2-day tournament and maybe something a little bit more meaningful than the way it's split right now. So you guys can look at that. It did have some support. It has the support of the North. It had some support from the South as well.
That's page 15 of your packet if you're following along on that as well, so that you can look through that at your leisure. I hesitate to ask, but any comments or questions on this?
well, I didn't think we were allowed to discuss it right now.
We can discuss different things. If this brings up an idea that you've got for some other proposal, or if you just need a little bit of clarification on what this is, for instance, I don't think we're going to go down the rabbit hole of the merits of it per se. But if you need clarification on just exactly what this is, I think this is a good time to ask that.
Well, and Bart Bobovit, 485A North, just to be fair, I think at the Board of Control meeting this week, I think public comment was made that had some additional comments with respect to proposals specific to wrestling, more about qualifiers and things like that, but that's something that's going to be the work of this committee eventually as well, right? So
yeah, that's down the road.
Although it's not on the screen in front of us, is also a piece of the things that we're talking about.
On this wrestling proposal, correct me if I'm wrong, it's basically exactly what we have now. It's just going from 6 to 4, correct?
It's correct. There's four.
Okay.
There's 2 regions in the 4A and there's 2 regions in the 5A.
Okay.
It would simply just be combining those 2 into a 16-man bracket.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this one? Okay, we've got a proposal in from one of the coaches that is on pages 17 and 18 of your packet. This comes from Ty Wakefield. I'm not going to try to summarize this because this is not a proposal that I brought forward. I don't think it's fair that I try to summarize somebody else's work. I'm going to let the committee focus on this as they need to. I will let any of our 3A representatives who may know a little bit more about this than I fill in any details.
Dallas Larson, 3A South. I talked to Ty today just to clarify. This is kind of the first one he sent out, Bart. I think that the public comment he gave you was more tuned to what he's trying to do. Basically, his proposal would be, this is a 3A only. Well, not 3A only. He feels that we need to have a 3A public South boys basketball and a 3A charter private league in the 3A. It would entail still using rubric for public schools that are in the 4A that would move down based on rubric points or move up. It would be a relegation system, one year type system again. It would also allow, he would want to allow anyone that wants to, like I said, move up without having to wait the 3 years, more like the football where it's you win the 1 year, you can move right up the next year type of a system. I'm trying to think if I left out anything on what he was proposing, but that was the gist of this proposal. The main being the separation of charter public from public schools was the main part of his proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Again, not evaluating the merits of it, but if you have questions so that it can help you understand the proposal better, I think that's what we're kind of looking for at this point.
So, Mr. Larson, you can speak to this proposal a little bit, or are you just trying to summarize what was stated?
I was just trying to summarize what his proposal was, because when I got it, I read through, I wanted to, if things came up, I wanted to understand it better as the representative of his school. I tried to explain that to him. I'm a 3A South representative. I represent all the schools in 3A South, not just my own school or just whatever. So I just want to better understand what he was wanting. You heard in his public comment what some of his the things he feels about charters, the way that they get their teams versus a public school. So I'll let that, you can reread his public comment when Bart sends that out in detail if you'd like. But in general, when I asked him, he would like to see a different league between the 3A public schools and the 3A private / charter schools.
You know, it's Kim Parker from Needles. I just wanted to comment on his proposal here. Is the 2A has been dealing with this for quite a few years, and it has been a conversation over the years with us as 2A, and kind of knew this was going to go in that direction. And it's obviously something that does need to be discussed and really considered on what he's saying, one way or the other. But the teams in the 2A, you know, we've had quite a few private schools in dealing with this and the enrollment issues that he's stating. So it has factored the 2A over the years, and obviously now with Meadows and Guy-Waukesha Prep and teams moving up, it's seeing the same things taking place.
Any other discussion there?
I'm kind of a discussion, kind of a question. I mean, I don't think it's isolated to the 1A, 2A, 3A. I think it's a 1A through 5A problem. So, I know his is only a 3A proposal, but I definitely think this might be something we need to look at on all levels, because it's definitely not just a 1A, 2A, 3A problem.
Thank you, Ms. Habig. I've got one more in the packet here, and then we'll open it up to other proposals that may have been gathered by our committee members. Miles Baldwin from Wells, are you still with us on this call, sir?
Hello, can you hear me?
I sure can. Go ahead, sir. I know this is your proposal here that I've put up in front of us.
So this is just a couple ideas. The first one for the 1A, 2A split sports there, golf and wrestling. Looking at the NIAA, we might have 9 boys teams compete this year. So looking at that kind of gives the idea of maybe we look at that given the discussion earlier with changing the NIAA, and if that's something that we want to do, just kind of a topic for discussion there, I guess, on those particular sports. And then the basketball, volleyball, the East coaches, kind of some stuff has talked about, can we do an RPI system? Can we do a open bracket system? So this is kind of a compromise of that, given our traditional stuff that we've always done, plus maybe, you know, so that way some leagues in certain sports feel that their league is stacked and other leagues aren't. This would kind of be an idea to get just a discussion going on that. So that's all those 2 proposals are.
Thank you, Mr. Baldwin. And you can see what discussion, just well, we put 4 proposals on the screen and what that's already prompted among the 20 of us or so here in the room. There are people watching on YouTube. The discussion's starting all over the place, trust me on this. And that was kind of part of the goal of this. We got 6 months to write the rules. Let's figure out what way we need to go by seeing some of these ideas and then shaping it the way we need to shape it. Any clarification needed on Mr. Baldwin's information that he's given us?
Bart, Lou Marcouzis for the record, I do. Now, is there, now the NIAA, if I recall, is there a NIAA provision around 9 teams being in a region? Is that the whole premise behind this? Is that kind of the whole reason?
There is a NIAA provision that says that we must have 9 teams in a classification in order to have a state championship in that classification.
Okay.
Not true on a regional end of things, because there was a time not all that long ago, Mr. Larson, I'm sure you remember, where the 3A South was 3 teams. But yeah, we do have to have, that's what's currently in there. We talked about it at our last meeting. Do we want to think about lowering that number depending on what we do? And as Mr. Paul Anderson mentioned earlier, if we're going to make changes in the NAC, we can't exactly put a proposal together assuming the NAC's going to get changed.
Yeah,
but
I think that would be probably wise to maybe consider that for Mr. Anderson, maybe going in this next legislative session because of the way things are growing and moving, perhaps some flexibility with that, especially now with the addition of additional letters and characteristics of different sports, perhaps some leniency around that 9-team provision. I know some other states, our neighboring states, have some of those leniencies as well, and where certain programs they'll play teams twice and whatnot. So, just for something to consideration of this group, and I know the legislative session is still a little bit of ways away, but it comes quickly upon us, and be better to be proactive about some of these measures.
Thank you, Mr. Marcus. Go
Dallas
ahead, Mr. Larson.
3A South at that last board meeting. My eyes were open a little bit about rules that were passed that really made sense for 3A, 4A, 5A. But after I heard from 1A schools it opened my eyes, like, oh, wow, I could see how that is an issue for 1A, even though that rule applies really well to the 3A, 4A, or 5A. So I think I like this as well for 1As to be able to have a little bit more. But for the 3A, 4A, I don't think 9 is a bad number.
Real quickly, Rob Cottrell, Sparkside 3A North President.
Yeah.
I know we are running into this issue with soccer here in the North.
Yep.
Where the 3A North has taken on the 2A schools. And unfortunately, from what I'm hearing, some of our 2A Eastern schools that are participating in 3A soccer last year are not going to be able to field a soccer team this year due to the imbalance in competition with our Elcos and some of our other larger 3A schools. So this would, being allowed to do this would definitely help in that situation.
Thank you, Mr. Cottrell. Why don't we bring that specifically back to our next meeting, and let's have a little bit of a discussion about where we think we might need to go with the number of teams in the state championship. It was something that I know I discussed a little bit in our last meeting, because this is something that would need to go in front of our board pretty quickly if this is something the committee would want to do, so that we can get that looked at by the Legislative Council Bureau and go forward with that. I'll put that on my notes for our next meeting here in April to let's make that a point of really hashing that one out. Any other proposals from our people on our committee that have come forward? If you need to share it on your screen, I'll let you share. I'll let you screen share, do whatever you need to. I know we're running a little bit long here, and we can come back in April and discuss more proposals. But let's open it up. Anything else that's out there from our committee that you've got a proposal from yourself, from somebody else, from your group that you'd like to share?
Bart, does the proposal have to be polished with a nice little, document and everything like that? Or would you suggest that we come back, as opposed to dealing with speculative thoughts, come back to the next meeting with something a little bit more grounded?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Marcuzis, and please, committee members, if you disagree, jump in and just quash me on this one. But I think a lot of us are visual people and would like to kind of see something on paper that we can digest, not just with somebody throwing the idea out there, but maybe being able to look at too when they walk away from this meeting. So we've got that opportunity. I think if we meet back again in 3 or 4 weeks to have solicited some other input from people, maybe we put that out there then. Does that sound okay to you?
It does. It sounds great, because I know that both myself and a couple of my other principal colleagues, we sit on, we facilitate, at least in Clark County, kind of the high school principals meeting, both informally and formally. And I think it'd be important for us to at least propose some ideas or gather some ideas from that group, because the principals are the ones that come in the last minute and want to throw a grenade into everything. So I'd like to be a little bit more proactive with that group. We have a meeting scheduled here in another week for us to kind of maybe agendize this for us to get some, and then perhaps some of the Southern representatives that are on this call at least. I want to be able to like at least solicit some of the leads of each of those sport entities to garner and solicit some possible ideas so that we can come back at least at the next meeting and have a more formalized proposal as opposed to just mythological ideas that are just shot out in the dark here.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Marcoussis, for that. Anybody else on this item? I know I'm looking up at my TV. I'm not watching the game, but I can tell you Nevada's up double figures. And I know there's some people in the room that'd like to go watch that. So I won't keep you too much longer. Let's move on to item number 9. Any other comments for the good of the order? I'll jump in here real quick, and the public comment, I will send that out to everybody on this committee so that you have it, because we weren't able to get through the full public comment. I will also send you the timeline that we passed here today, that we approved here today, with a little bit more detail on each item so that you have that. Again, that'll go to our Board of Control in their next meeting so that they solidify everything for us, but that's what we'll operate under. I foresee us meeting again, depending on everybody's spring break, 3-4 weeks, somewhere in that time frame in April, and maybe one more meeting the first week of May as we continue to gather this giant whiteboard of ideas. If that's acceptable to everybody. Mr. Larson, jump in real quick.
Yeah. Are you going to be sending out the what we passed, the timeline? Will you be sending that to all member schools? Is it our job as committee members to get it to our, I mean, how is that going to make sure that everyone sees it, to make sure that if there's anyone by April that wants to
Yeah, I can definitely do that and say this is what we've accepted at this point. We are hearing members that want to comment on this at our next meeting. I can get that sent out. Mr. Paul Anderson, we're fine to do that. I can get that maybe sent out starting next week.
I think I saw he had to leave.
Okay. Yeah, he's got some important stuff to attend to.
I just want to make sure, is it, because if I'm supposed to do it to my 3A South, or if you're going to do it to everyone, I just want to make sure it gets out for people to comment, to see. And
I will do that. I'll also send it to our Board of Control and say, look, this is what our realignment committee passed. It's going to come forward to you so that they're aware as well. But we do want to hear from our member schools in case any changes need to be made. We'll take care of that from our office. We'll make sure it gets out to all schools. I will send an email to committee members too. I don't want to pin you down to a date for our next meeting right now. I'll try to gather some possible dates from everybody of when we can meet again, but let's look at probably 4 weeks from now, give or take, in that area, just as a little time frame. Hopefully we're through everybody's spring breaks by then. But I'll get that out to you probably starting next week as well. Okay. Anything else? Any other comments for the good of the order right now? If you do, now's the time to speak up. If you don't, that's okay too. Okay, let's move on to item number 10. Public comment. This time provides an opportunity for citizens to address the committee about any matter not listed on the agenda. Items raised during this portion of the agenda cannot be deliberated or acted upon until notice procedures of the open meeting law have been met. Should a member of the public wish to speak on a matter not listed on the agenda, it is asked that said person complete a public comment card and submit it to an NIAA staff member prior to the opening of this item. A limit of 3 minutes per person and/or 5 minutes for the spokesperson of a group may be imposed. It is requested that comments be directed to the committee as a whole. Comments deemed to be irrelevant, repetitious, offensive, inflammatory, willfully disruptive, or deemed to be personal attacks will not be permitted. For our members all around the state, Ms. Lott, specifically you in the NIAA office, do we have any live public comment at this time?
No, we do not.
Anybody else have live public comment where they may be? Everyone, thank you for your time today. You realize, our new people, this is a process. We're going to have a lot to go through. You've signed on to something that you're going to be put through the ringer a few times on this, but man, I really appreciate you being here and being a part of this. You have no idea how much this is helping us and helping the kids so we can get to where we need to be. Let's adjourn this meeting at 3:01 p.m. on March 21st, while Nevada's still up 13 points in the second half. Everyone, thanks for your time. Go watch some March Madness. Take care, everybody.
Hey, Bart, Clark County Fair is the 10th through the 13th.